Hi children, welcome. Welcome to today's social science class. Children, in this video, I'm going to explain about new crafts in the city, in search of raw materials, food for people in the cities, about the closer look of Harappan towns in Gujarat, and about the mystery of the end. New crafts in the city. Let us look at some of the objects that were made and found in Harappan cities. Most of the things that have been found by archaeologists are made of stone, shell, and metal, including copper, bronze, gold, and silver. Copper and bronze were used to make tools, weapons, ornaments, and vessels. Gold and silver were used to make ornaments and vessels. Perhaps the most striking finds are those of beads, weights, and blades. Stone weights. Notice how carefully and preciously these weights are shaped. These were made up of chat, a kind of stone. These were probably used to weigh precious stones or metals. Beads. Many of these were made out of carnelian, a beautiful red stone. The stone was cut, shaped, polished, and finally a hole was bored through the center so that a string could be passed through it. Besides stone weights and beads, the Harapans made stone blades, and they made it is very carefully and very sharp. So it is they used widely for cutting. The Harappans also made seals out of stone. These are generally rectangular and usually have an animal carved on them. Seals may have been used to stamp bags or packets containing goods that were sent from one place to another. After a bag was closed or tied, a layer of wet clay was applied on the knot and the seal was pressed on it. The impression of the seal is known as a sealing. If the sealing was intact, one could be sure that the goods had arrived safely. The Harappans also made pots with beautiful black designs. Cotton was probably grown at Mehrgarh from about 7,000 years ago. Actual pieces of cloth were found attached the lid of a silver vase and some copper objects at Mohenjo Daro. Archaeologists have also found spindle holes made up of terracotta and faience. These were used to spin thread. Embroidered cloth, a stone statue of an important man found from Mohenjo-daro, shows him wearing an embroidered garment. Many of the things that were produced were probably the work of specialists. A specialist is a person who is trained to do only one kind of work. For example, cutting stone or polishing beads or carving seals. Look at the illustration page number 36 and see how well the face is carved and how carefully the beard is shown. This must have been the work of an expert craft person. Not everybody could have been a specialist. We do not know whether only men were specialists or only women were specialists. Perhaps some women and men may have been specialists. Faience. Unlike stone or shell that are found naturally, faience is a material that is artificially produced. A gum was used to shape sand or powdered quarters into an object. The objects were then glassed, resulting in shiny, glassy surface. The colors of the glass were usually blue or sea green. Faience was used to make beads, bangles, earrings, and tiny vessels. In search of raw materials. Raw materials are substances that are either found naturally or produced by farmers or herders, such as wood or ores of metals. These are then processed to produce finished goods. For example, cotton produced by farmers, is raw material that may be processed to make cloth, while some of the raw materials that the Harappans used were available locally. Many items such as copper, tin, gold, silver, and precious stones had to be brought from distant places. The Harappans probably got copper from present day Rajasthan and even from Oman in West Asia. Tin, which was mixed with the copper to produce bronze, may have been brought from present day Afghanistan and Iran. Gold could have come all the way from present day Karnataka, and precious stones from present day Gujarat, Iran, and Afghanistan. How were goods carried from one place to another? Look at the illustration given page number 38. One shows a toy and the other is a seal. Can you suggest what the mode of transport used by the Harappans were? Do you come across illustration of the wheeled vehicles in earlier lessons? Food for people in the cities. While many people lived in the cities, others living in the countryside grew crops and reared animals. These farmers and herders supplied food to craftspersons, scribes, and rulers in the cities. We know from remains of plants that the Harappans grew wheat, barley, pulses, peas, rice, sesame, linseed, and mustard. A new tool, the plough, was used to dig the earth for turning the soil and planting seeds, while real ploughs, which were probably made of wood, have not survived. Toy models have been found. As these regions does not receive heavy rainfall, some form of irrigation may have been used. This means that water was stored and supplied to the fields when the plants were growing. The Harappans reared cattle, sheep, goat, and buffalo. Water and pasture were available around settlements. However, in the dry summer months, large herds of animals were probably taken to greater distance in search of grass and water. The city of Dolavira was located on Kadirbet in the Ran of Kutch, where there was fresh water and fertile soil. Unlike some of the other Harappan cities, which were divided into two parts, Dolavira was divided into three parts, and each part was surrounded with massive stone walls, with entrance through gateways. There was also a large open area in the settlement where public ceremonies could be held. Other finds include large letters of the Harappan scripts that were carved out of white stones and perhaps inlaid in wood. This is a unique find as generally Harappan writings have been found on small objects such as seals. The city of Lothal stood beside a tributary of the Sabarmati in Gujarat, close to the Gulf of Kamp. It was situated near areas where raw materials such as semi precious stones were easily available. This was an important center for making objects out of stone, shell, and metal. There was also a storehouse in the city, many seals and ceilings. The impression of seals on clay were found in this storehouse. A building that was found here was probably a workshop for making beads, pieces of stone, half made beads, tools for bead making, and finished beads have all been found here. A dockyard at Lothal. This huge tank may have been a dockyard where boats and ships come in from the sea and through the river channel. Goods were probably loaded and unloaded here. The mystery of the end. Around 3900 years ago, we find the beginning of major change. People stopped living in many of the cities. Writing, seals, and weights were no longer used. Raw materials brought from longer distance become rare. In Mohenjo Daro, we find that garbage built up on the streets, the drainage system broken down, and new, less impressive houses were built even over the streets. Why did all this happen? We are not sure. Some scholars suggest that the rivers dried up, Others suggest that there was deforestation. This could have happened because fuel was required for baking bricks and for smelting copper ores. Besides, grazing by large herds of cattle, sheep, and goats may have destroyed the green cover. In some areas, there were floods, but none of these reasons can explain the end of all the cities. Flooding or river drying up would have had an effect in only some areas. It appears as if the rulers lost control. If any case, the effects of the changes are quite clear. Sites in Sindh and West Punjab, present day Pakistan, were abandoned while many people moved into newer, smaller settlements into the east and the south. New cities emerged about 1400 years later. You will read about them in the chapter 6 and 9. Find Egypt in your atlas. Most of Egypt is a dry desert, except for the lands along the river Nile. Around 5000 years ago, kings ruled over Egypt. These kings sent armies to distant lands to get gold, silver, ivory, timber, and precious stones. They also built huge domes known as pyramids. When they died, the bodies of kings were preserved and buried in these pyramids. These carefully preserved bodies are known as mummies. A large number of objects were also buried with them. These included food and drinking, clothes, ornaments, utensils, musical instruments, weapons, and animals. Sometimes, even serving men and women were buried with the rulers. These are among us the most elaborate burials known in the world history. Some important dates. Cotton cultivation at Mehrgarh started about 7000 years ago. Beginning of cities about 4700 years ago. Beginning of the end of these cities about 3900 years ago. The emergence of other cities about 2500 years ago. Children, I'm going to wind up this video and this chapter is also over. Now you have to read this chapter many times and underline important points in your textbook. Then complete all your works. Okay, thank you. Thank you to listening my class.